I figure a week from tonight I will go back to Dark Souls for the Friday night stream. So, picking up where we left off here, trying to remember where we were. Oh, Sector 4, the aquatic sector. We had just finished that up. Oh, lower my volume a little bit here. I still can't get used to the fact that I've got like 7 volume controls now. There we go. And I think I start every stream with that comment, so... Alright, so, when we wrapped up last time, we had just hunted down Ceres in the aquatic sector and taken him out and gotten the speed booster. And now it is time... Yes, O-Dog, yeah, O-Dog says I think you were killing X-Parasites, and... Yeah, that's pretty much sort of the subtext for the whole game. Yeah, Katie, the Castlevania, the DS games on the Castlevania have a lot in common with the DS of a Castlevania. The Castlevania DS games have a lot in common with this game. More so than more so than just saying that they're Metroidvania games, that they actually sort of follow the gated style of this game. Which again was was probably something that was motivated by the fact that it's on a portable game system. So you section off the game and you make it easy to remember where you were and what you were doing and to stop frequently. I'm not actually reading them. I guess I should be paying attention to what the AI is saying, huh? Hi Iggy, welcome back. I'm not quite sure what dissertations are going to come out tonight. Probably, given what's coming up, we'll probably talk a lot about villains, and probably a little bit more about narrative and tension building. The game gets gradually more interesting, which is kind of a not really the best way to structure a game, to be totally honest. You kind of want to front load and end load your interest, but... And here we have another suggestion that the X-Parasites might actually be more intelligent than we're giving them credit for. And also that the AI has this sort of interest in studying them. Oh, okay. So the Galactic Federation has prepared an upgrade for my missiles, and I can go ahead and download them at a data room, but the only data room that I have access to right now is in the Pyro sector, Sector 3, and it's going to be gated behind a level 2 security door. So we can see again that it's maintaining that sort of switching off between mission types pattern of I just fought a boss and took out a major... I just fought a boss and now it's sending me on a more relaxed search for an upgrade. And so it's got that alternating tension curve of here's something scary and dangerous, now here's something a little more relaxed and exploratory, and go back and forth. Yeah, Odog says he's guessing this is the Fire Planet environment. It would be like really weird if the Pyro sector was actually like the Cupcake Planet environment, wouldn't it? Oh yes, this is where we keep all the creatures from Planet Snuggle Fun. Now, in case you forgot that briefing, here's another briefing. this room is actually a bit bigger. Or this sector is actually a bit bigger than the... I'm going to speed up the text a little bit, but I'm trying to give everyone a chance to read it. So this is actually kind of another neat plot element, and I think this would have been more interesting if it was set up as more of a choice rather than Samus being ordered to do it. And that is the idea that in order to upgrade herself to face SAX and the other monsters in the game, she's got to open these security hatches, but at the same time, every time she opens these security hatches, she's making the places on the space station more dangerous for herself. I think we talked a lot about choice and conflict when we were doing Super Metroid, but it kind of bears repeating that true choices in games are really about taking two different goals and putting them into conflict and forcing the player to choose one or the other one. Oh no, did I accidentally say repeat? Okay, I don't know. Alright. So, and this actually, I think I did a Twitter rant on this not too long ago, particularly about moral choices in games. Because most video games, when they have moral choices, it basically boils down to, here's a good option and an evil option, and choose whichever one matches the sort of playthrough that you want to do. And that, when you get down to it, isn't really a choice, because games like that generally support either you play... Whoops, that's a superheated area, I can't go in there yet. Gimmick from earlier Metroids. Hey Tagrath, no, I am not giving up Dark Souls. I'm gonna go back to it next week. It's just that because I want to do Other M next week, and I only have a limited access to a Wii, I want to finish this game this weekend. So, moral choices. Okay. So, you know, especially because what you generally see in games is that the ending of the game changes depending on whether you did a totally good playthrough or a totally evil playthrough, and I've actually been playing through Infamous a little bit, and that's like a perfect example. And the problem with that approach is that it's really, in the end, it's not a choice, except for the choice the player makes at the beginning of the game to say, I'm going to be good or I'm going to be evil. And it works out not to be moral choices at all. I think a more interesting moral choice setup would be something along the... I think I was saying this on Twitter too, where you want something like... imagine a game where the game got harder if you tried to play a good playthrough. You know, where the choice to be a good character was an inconvenience. It was difficult, which is part of what makes, you know, doing the right thing hard, is that it's usually inconvenient or painful. You know, usually when you're conflicted about whether or not to tell the truth or not, it's because, you know, telling the truth is gonna cause you pain, or, you know, cause you... Well, and as soon as we lift the hatch, or, yeah, as soon as we lift the security gate, by the way, the X-Parasites invade, exactly as Adam forewarned. So this area was not hostile, and now it is suddenly hostile. And I forgot how to aim down. Okay. Yeah, see, O-Dog is mentioning the Mass Effect games in terms of moral choices, and I agree to a point, but at the same time, it's still sort of... The game is set up to be equally playable Whether you decide to go Paragon or Renegade and whatever choices you decide to make, all the choices lead to an interesting story, which is great, but it also means that there's no actual cost for the Paragon or the Renegade choices. You know, in terms of, you know, like, the good option doesn't cost you anything. And so it's not really, again, goals and conflict so much as you decide the character and the type of playthrough you want to play, and you go ahead and you do that. Done and done. Now, of course, I don't want every game to you know, like, follow that model. But what I'm saying is, if a game wants to claim that it has moral choices, they have to actually be choices, you know, and that means things have to be kind of conflicted. And this is actually a big failing that DMs make in a lot of their games, too, is that they also, like, all of the choices in their game... I'm trying to think how to say this. You know what it really comes down to? It's that all of the goals for the game align. It's very rare that a DM will set down, say, 2 different goals, and then have a situation where the players actually have to decide that one of those goals is just invalid forever. You know, you can either get the gold or you can, you know, save the noble, one or the other, but you can't do both. That kind of a thing. Am I almost at the data room? Yeah, I'm almost at the data room. Good. Alright, so now I can download a missile upgrade. And super missiles work a little bit differently in this game as opposed to Super Metroid. In this game, they actually work just as a straight upgrade to your missiles. So now all of the missiles I fire will be super missiles. They do increased damage, and that's really the only difference, which is... whoop. And we can see that this area got destroyed while I was in there. And my way out is blocked. And I think before I want to chase down that noise, I shouldn't have gone up there. Before I chase down that noise, I do want to save my game. And recover. And with the super missiles, I can now destroy those green guys. Yeah, Dragon Age did... The chat's mentioning Dragon Age. And Dragon Age did also have a lot of gray choices. But again, a gray choice, a moral choice, like... I guess that kind of counts more toward what I'm saying, where it really does sort of define the character. Anywho, let's go see what that rumbling was. And this is the next boss fight. The security robot BO-X, because everything that's been infected with an X parasite has X at the end. This is a security robot with organic components. The organic components were infected by the X parasites, and it has now gone berserk. You can see it kind of dashes back and forth, and it occasionally releases those fire bombs, where if you don't let them hit you and you stay right above them, it's pretty easy to avoid them. Pretty easy to avoid the fire. And then the tough part is actually just hitting the guy, because you've got to get the missiles, you've got to get your missiles right down into his center section there. And you can't do it while he's firing. can't do it while he's firing. And because you have to hold the right shoulder button to activate the missiles and the left shoulder button to aim. You also don't have a whole hell of a lot of mobility for this. You can't kind of keep aiming down and then kind of slide back and forth. Or, you know, you can't keep your aim up and move laterally. And this was one of those fights that actually showed, showed off one of the big problems with the controls on the Game Boy Advance, and that was, if you had big hands, like I do, it was actually really, really tough to hold the game and hold down both shoulder buttons. Yeah, O-Dog is mentioning that there's a lot of organic tech in this universe, and you have no idea. Actually, I guess for this story, it's kind of important that most of the technology on the station is cybernetic or, you know, has organic components, because you've got this whole... I'm having a lot of trouble hitting that. The hitbox on this guy is actually really narrow, and it makes me look incompetent here. You know what? I'm just gonna take a little bit of damage here. If you try to stay directly above him, it's hard to get out of his way as he drops the missiles. And you can kind of see as I break him down, you can see that there's actually a brain and a jar in the middle there. And then he runs for it. And I'm not talking so much about the exploration in this game, because the game is much more linear, but we can see there, I can't actually get through that wall, even though it's obvious that I should be able to. Those blocks will actually let me through if I have the screw attack. Oh, hey, Dice App! Didn't see you come in. And I actually really didn't even talk about the whole encounter with BOX and everything, I guess. Because, once again, so we had the mission of exploration, the mission of find your way out, or find your way to the upgrade. And then, partway through, the environment changed and the tension level changed. And there's actually an upgrade here that you're actually supposed to be able to get later on. But there's kind of a trick to it. Whoops. So if you get rid of the lower set of blocks, then you get rid of the upper set of blocks so that the lower set comes back before the upper set does. You can bomb that block up above and shoot your way up to an energy tank. Just a little sequence breaking pro tip from your buddy Angry, for anybody who's playing through this. Otherwise, you're expected to come back, I think, again with the screw attack. And now that we've gotten our upgrade, we're going to get the hell out of Sector 3. Even though Sector 3 is a pretty big sector, we're not able to explore a lot of it because of those superheated areas that we can't tolerate. And this is the first... Well, actually, come to think of it, this is the second area in the game, because the aquatic area was the first area in the game to do this. But it's the first area where, as we leave, we're aware that there was more to explore. So it's the first area that kind of makes the promise that you're going to be coming back to these places again. Whereas, you know, when you first started out, you know, you could have sort of this sense that the game was just level-based. There's, you know, 6 levels, you're going to go through them. And it does 2 things to kind of gradually break you out of that. Number 1 is it has you do the areas out of order. It had me go to 4 and then 3. And the other thing that it did is this thing where I have the map and I can see that there's a big area yet that I can't explore. And so again, we have the idea of this growing contagion. Whoops. And again, just a reminder, because of the Metroid vaccine that was used to cure Samus of the X parasites, she cannot tolerate extreme cold temperatures. And actually, you know, if we want to talk about themes for a second, because I think themes are a thing that a lot of game masters ignore. Which is a shame, because they can be really powerful. When you get down to the, like, this game presents a lot of a theme is, yeah, let's do that first. So a theme is basically what the story is about at its heart, at its core. You know, what's really going on in the story. And so we might say that one of the themes here is infection or corruption. In this case, things being turned against you. You know, we have SAX turns Samus's own powers against her. The X are turning the biological specimens and robots of this station against her. The X themselves are turning the environment against Samus. And in fact, there are areas where the environment is turned against Samus just by her own nature. Even her own body has been turned against her because she was infected. She had to have her suit removed, and ultimately she had to take in a part of her enemy, the Metroids, to become what she was. Oh, sorry, I forgot about this little cutscene here. Since we're speaking of dramatic irony again. And that's another thing that this game does well, is it doesn't sort of let you relax or get used to it. Like, we sort of now have established this pattern of, you know, exploring an area, gaining power, exploring an area, gaining a power, with the idea that ultimately I'm going to be powerful enough to defeat SAX and end the X-Parasite invasion. So, now that I've gotten used to that and I'm starting to make some headway, the game's got to throw this curveball at me. Good night, Katie. Thanks for stopping by. The game's got to throw this curveball at me by revealing, hey, there's another mystery here. Don't think that you really have this figured out. Okay, so this is Sector 6, the Nocturnal Sector. And I'm here to download the Varia suit. Which, if you remember from Super Metroid, will allow me to tolerate changes in temperature. And I think the AI explained it, but I'm being really bad because I'm not really reading what the AI is saying. Aha, and here's another new thing. I like that the AI is programmed for these dramatic pauses. You know, like, and they've been changed by the cold. You know, it's like who programmed it for dramatic tension? And again, we have this sort of difference between the AI and... I think at this point Samus has started calling the AI Adam, hasn't she? Because it reminds her of her old commander. So I'm just gonna call it Adam. Adam has this sort of fascinated, analytical outlook on the X, and also seems to respect the X for being this sort of intelligent, predatory, adaptable, and very dangerous foe. Whereas Samus, her view was, you know, in the elevator scene, she gave the view that the X is incapable of reason, and it's simply a monster to be destroyed. The whole gimmick now with the Frozen X, that is the Arctic X, which I will see in a little while, is that now, the X-Parasites, there are some X-Parasites that if I touch them, I won't collect them, they will actually paralyze and damage me. And if I can find one... Yeah, so there's one of the Frozen X-Parasites. And if I grab it, you can see it takes off 99 health, it takes off a full energy tank. And it didn't really freeze me. So, once again... and I just stupidly just jumped into that one. Whoops. I just got my ass handed to me. That was stupid. I saw Dewison in the chat. He suddenly, oh shit! I don't want to go in there. So this section has sort of a cat and mouse feel to it. And you've got to shoot the blocks out of the way to proceed. But if you shoot the wrong blocks, there's Frozen X-Parasites behind it. What I was saying, the neat mechanic about the Frozen X-Parasites that are pretty definitely going to kill me, aren't they, huh? Yeah. I let myself take a lot of damage because I got distracted by the chat. Power up by killing these guys. It goes back to what I was saying about that theme of things being turned against Samus, of infection and corruption. Now the power-ups in the game have, you know, some of them have been turned deadly. It also helps support that idea that the X are adapting to me as I'm sort of adapting to them. So there's this sort of evolutionary race, if you want to call it that, of you know, I'm trying to power up before they can power up too much. Thewison asks a really interesting question. He says, the game seems kind of repetitive, but it doesn't get boring. And yeah, that's whoops, shit. Damn it. I thought I could blow through that wall. Oh right. Oh shit. Oh. And you're exposed. Shit. Fortunately, SAX does not see you. But if you go over there, she will come after you, and she will wreck you. Because again, she is armed with all of your power-ups, including an ice beam, and you are very vulnerable to it. But if you listen to the sound effects and the music cues, you'll know when she's left the room. Oh no, Thewison, don't apologize for distracting. I didn't want to talk over that, but it is it is actually a really good question, and it goes to a really awesome D&D game building concept, so I definitely want to answer it. And I think what keeps this game from getting boring is that it... Well, I already sort of talked about how it alternates the feel of the different missions. So like I said, with this mission, there's this sort of cat and mouse feel going on, where if you walk into the wrong room, you see those big frozen X, and you panic and you run out immediately. And like there are the X basically hiding in these blocks that you're going to accidentally expose, and so you're basically trying to avoid them. And that's a different mechanic from the previous mission where I was, you know, hunting down, exploring the area and looking for a door to open. Or the previous area where I was basically just fighting through creatures for a boss. Yep, and now I'm at the data room, where I'm supposed to be downloading the Varia suit. And an X-Parasite destroyed the data room. And now I have a boss fight. And this guy, he's called like the Mega X, or the Mega Core X, or the Super Core X, or something like that. So he's got the Varia suit power-up that I was supposed to collect. He somehow managed to download it. And it manifests itself in two ways. Number one, he's got those little protective orbs around him that I've got to knock out. Number two, he's actually invulnerable to missiles because of the Varia suit armor. And he's invulnerable to normal shots, so only the charge beam will do it. He's not much of a fight, to be honest. He's sort of... I hate to be vulgar, but I refer to these fights as a fart in an elevator fight. I'm sorry, a fart in the wind fight. Because they're actually really insubstantial and not terribly memorable. It comes and goes like a fart in the wind. And of course, when you're done, the Core X. You know, funny, O-Dog in the chat is asking, why would you build doors that you need to use weapons to open? Oh, shit! I can't believe I just died to a Core X. That's really embarrassing. In Metroid Prime, because Metroid Prime was kind of trying to do this explain everything thing, and enough people wanted me to stream that I'll probably end up doing that at some point, but, one of the things they tried to explain was that all of the doors had these force fields over them to prevent parasites and minor animals from getting through them. And so you would shoot the door to disarm the force field, and then you could go through it. And it was like such a ridiculous explanation for something that really didn't need an explanation, because we always accepted that, you know what, that's just how doors work in the Metroidverse. I like to think it's just because Samus is too impatient to use a button or a doorknob. Or a button. She's got this kind of shoot first and ask questions later mentality. Yeah, and Samus does make a little bit of a grunting noise when she gets hit. Try to handle this a little better, shall we? I did mention that, like, the Core X, I just have a lot of trouble avoiding this. They're, like, it chases Samus, but it's like a floaty chase. And I tend to have a lot of trouble with it. Hi, Gremlin! So what the hell things were we talking about, before the boss fight? Oh, so now I picked up the Varia suit, which changes my color slightly, and gives me increased armor, and it also makes me immune to, extremes of temperature, hot and cold. In case nobody knew what extremes of temperature was. So you'll notice I can now absorb the Super Frozen X. Which now gets back to that theme that I was talking about of, like, trying to sort of out-evolve them. And now they become power-ups for me again. But keep watching them, because the game actually does something really interesting even with that. I'm just gonna pick up a few random items that I know are here. I know there's an item somewhere in this room. Oh, there it is. You can tell there's an item somewhere in this room because it's got a circle on the map. Alright, so anyway, we were talking about why this game doesn't get boring even though it keeps doing the same things, you know, it's repetitive. Oh! Notice that now the X have figured out that I can absorb them, and now they're running away from me. Oh, that one, he got caught. So again, there's that whole little story there of, are the X really more intelligent than Samus gives them credit for? And, you know, what's the deal with Samus, or the AI Adam's fascination with them? And it's actually kind of a neat dynamic that the X start to run away from... The blue X run away from me once they figure out that I'm not vulnerable to them anymore. Did we lose game audio? That was weird. I mentioned this game has has occasional audio glitches in this emulator. But now, having wrapped up our assignment here, and gotten the Varia suit so that we are protected from extremes of temperature, did you guys lose the voice chat too, or was it just the game audio? So now I can explore this area, but can't go any further because I need power bombs. The game audio went out, not the commentary. That's good, because we all know that I'm what you're here to listen to. Oh! Speaking of the game turning things against you. And honestly, since I keep trying to get back to the topic of theming, that's how you do a theme. Like, you decide what on sort of a on a metaphoric or symbolic level your story is about, and then you find different ways to put that in the game, or yeah, in the game, or the adventure, or the campaign, whatever it is you happen to be doing. in order to keep reinforcing it. So you never outright say what the game is actually about, you just sort of let people figure it out. And that's a trick that you can use in your role-playing games as well. You come up with a theme like corruption, and then you think of different ways that you can show that in your game. You know, like, you know, if your whole theme is going to be corruption, and the party starts out in, like, a lawful good city, and then they come back to it at one point, and gradually criminal syndicates are taking over, and it's becoming more and more, crime-oriented. And then they go off on another mission, and they have to deal with a devil that's kind of, that's, you know, like, corrupted someone. You know, and then maybe at some point there's a king who has given into his own evil, and then, you know, you just keep adding in these things that kind of build on the same idea, and it makes your game more powerful because people come away remembering that, you know, people become aware of the themes, even if they're not aware of them consciously. Catching up on the chat. Did the X have any... The blue X have a positive effect? Yes, they restore health. More health than the normal yellow X. And I think I have to talk with Adam again. And then... I gotta get back. Gotta answer Thewison's question. Even though I think he had to step out, but it's an interesting thing worthy of discussion. An excellent question. Dramatic pause. Yep, I discovered that one on my own. Way to build me up and then cut me down. See, now, interestingly enough, that's actually more kind of a scary thing than it seems if you're a big Metroid fan. The idea that, like, ultimately the Ice Beam is what you need to be able to defeat the Metroids. That's the way it's been in every Metroid game. So the idea now that you're being told you'll never have the Ice Beam in this game, and the game has Metroid in the name, is kind of just a little bit of extra, sort of, I guess, I'm trying, what's the word? Disempowering. It's a form of horror, actually, where you feel like you're being robbed of your ability to deal with situations, where you feel like you're not powerful enough to handle things. Which you could say is another thing that this game is sort of emphasizing, is Samus's powerlessness in the face of an overwhelming enemy, one that her ability to defeat is not immediately obvious. Which, when you get down to it, is actually kind of an interesting story choice for this game. I think he's just going to repeat everything he just said. Whoop. Oh, okay, so now we're back in one of these missions of find the key for the level for the yellow doors, and then download the data. And then I'll get the ice missiles. See, it's sort of... it's something that the creators of this game had to work really hard at, because ultimately Samus has always been a character who is powerful enough and independent enough to handle whatever situation she ends up in. You know, and every one of the Metroid games is sort of an empowerment story. The idea that through your own badassery and exploration and skill, you become powerful enough to defeat all the foes in the game. But you start off already feeling kind of powerful. You know, you start off with this sense that even though you're alone and isolated, you still, you know, you're gonna get there. You're gonna be powerful enough to do it. And when this game decided to go for a more horror approach, well, part of horror is actually the feeling of powerlessness. And that was something that they had to build up. And they did it in a number of ways. Obviously, just in the physical appearance, taking away Samus's suit and her appearance, and, you know, visually crippling her, as it were, is sort of the first way that they drive that home, that Samus is powerless in this situation. To put her in a position where she had to be saved by the Metroids and by the Galactic Federation scientists and everything, that also kind of was a jab at her self-reliance. And then, of course, making the enemy a fully powered Samus was sort of the ultimate act of making you feel powerless. Particularly if you had played the previous Metroid games, because you knew how powerful you became at the end of those games, and that was what you were going to be facing at the end of this one. You know, presumably. I mean, you know, we all know when you start playing a video game, if the video game throws a villain into the story, you know at some point you're going to have to face that villain. You know, that's why you're doing it. Okay, so, getting back to why doesn't this game get boring? Because it changes up what you're doing in different scenes. Yeah, okay. Because there's a really neat idea. There's a really neat idea that sort of works in encounter design, and I'm going to discuss it in more detail on my blog, because it's actually a really good part of combat design. And I like to call it the size versus the shape of the encounter. So, when you think of... I'm going to talk specifically about combat design, and then I'm going to tie it back into this game and talk about why this game doesn't get boring. So when you think about a combat encounter in D&D, you know, all combat encounters have a certain power level to them. They have a challenge level, or an experience budget, or an encounter level, or something, and any tactically focused role-playing game has some way of measuring the power level of the encounter, and we can call that basically the size of the encounter. Not necessarily how big it is, but, you know, how many creatures there are is certainly a part of it, but also how powerful those creatures are in terms of level. And you can make an encounter bigger by adding more creatures, or by giving them better weapons, or by using higher level creatures. And you can make an encounter smaller by, you know, doing the opposite. Reduce the power level, use fewer creatures, whatever. But those encounters still sort of feel the same, just numerically they're different. You know, the difference is in the power level. The other thing you can do, if you want to change an encounter, instead of doing it numerically, I forgot how to get out of this room. Instead of doing it numerically, you can sort of change the circumstance of the encounter itself. Like, for example, you know, instead of a normal encounter where everybody rolls initiative, if you want to make it easier, you can have it so that the players surprise the enemies. And now, you know, they have the advantage over the enemies. Or they walk into a situation where the enemies are at sort of a terrain disadvantage. They're all gathered in the middle of the room, and the party can, you know, kind of basically pick them off or cut them down. And that's what I like to refer to as the shape of the encounter, how the encounter feels. And the only reason I call it the shape is because that sounds nice when you talk about the size versus the shape. Oh, and now I'm going to get my ice missiles. So again, this works as an upgrade to my missiles. They will now freeze enemies in place, kind of similar to the ice beam. Oh, back that way. I think, anyway, getting back to size and shape. So, I think the Extra Credits guys did a big episode on, I think they called it, like, differences in scale versus differences in kind or something like that. And, basically they were talking about the same thing. That, you know, you can change an encounter by changing the way it starts or the circumstances of the encounter. And that encounter will actually feel different, whereas if you, you know, if you just increase or decrease the numbers, the encounter will still have kind of the same feeling, it'll just be harder or easier. And the reason I think this game can get away with being repetitive and yet still not getting boring is because it mastered the idea of changing the shape of the game. Each mission that you take on is different from the previous mission. This is actually a little bit of a puzzle here, because if you don't collect that X, he'll turn into a different enemy, and then that lets you get up here. And then if you don't collect this X, he turns into a different enemy too. And then if you can get on top of him like I completely didn't, I guess I could let him get a little closer. You can actually grab a power-up that's hidden up in the ceiling there. So, there. Anywho. And we talked about that too with the whole changing, it's sort of rising and falling tension where, you know, you do something fast and frantic and then you switch to something slow, and you know, you do something where the party feels powerful and then you switch to something where the party feels powerless, and you go back and forth that way. And you change the feel of things. And that's important because it keeps your game from getting boring. I actually have another puzzle with the X here. I realize that I'm using this game as a platform to talk about role-playing games rather than talking about this game. But we have another sort of X puzzle here, where if you don't collect that X, he makes that guy grow. And this one is actually required to proceed. You have to figure that one out. Oops. And I didn't quite get enough speed up, because I need to use the speed booster to get through that wall. Alright, let's try that again. There we go. So this game does a number of things to make the game feel dynamic and alive. Apart from the general mission structure of the game and the changes in your mission objectives, I'm going the wrong way now. I should be heading up. Up and out. I got what I needed. There is the fact that the environments keep changing on you. Either because of your own actions, like when you unlock a security door, and then the X are able to infest a new area, or through the actions of SAX blowing up doors and corralling you in different places, or other bosses like the box, the BOX robot that broke the ceiling and let you get out of the area that way. Or whether it just throws something like that at you where it's like, I just went through here and now what the hell is that? Or why I didn't jump when I hit the jump button there. Okay. So now we see this, we have this thing flying around in the background. And this is another thing that Metroid Fusion uses to very good effect to build tension in the game. There we go. And I realize that I'm grabbing a lot of power-ups without commenting on them.
Emergency in Sector 3. Emergency in Sector 3.
Speaking of suddenly changing the pace of the game...
Emergency in Sector 3. Emergency in
Did you have fun having a nice relaxed exploration of that area looking for a power-up? Well, great. Now we have an emergency.
Emergency in Sector 3. Emergency in Sector 3. Emergency in Sector 3.
Yes, I figured it out. Emergency in Sector 3. Somehow I figured that one out. I have to say, I have a little bit of a problem with main boiler. Boiler sounds like something in the basement of the elementary school. It does not sound like something that should be powering a space station. Alright, so at this point I don't even need to comment on the fact that Adam thinks the X are intelligent, but... So now we have a timed mission, and actually a timed mission in an area that I knew I had left partially unexplored. So it's a timed mission into the unknown, which is, again, a pretty great way of changing the pace of the game. The game also disables saves in this area, so that you can't get yourself in a position where you're running so short on time that you're not going to succeed, and then, like, you know, save your game with only a few seconds left and render the game unwinnable. Which, all things considered, probably a smart move. And now, of course, we could flee all around the station trying to figure out where to go, but the map kind of tells us exactly where we need to go, and we can figure it out from there. The alarm and the alarm and the voice are excellent tools to increase exigency, which is another one of those great buzzwords that DMs should learn. Exigency just means a sense of urgency, a sense that if you don't do something now, you're never going to be able to do it. In this case, things are very urgent because the space station is going to explode. But it doesn't always have to be a time constraint. Stores use exigency whenever they have one of those sales that is only going on this weekend, so that you feel you have to run down to the store and get the sale or you're going to lose out on that great opportunity. Anything that's going to expire, or anything that has to be decided now, uses exigency. Exigency is also a great way to speed up your combats. If you hurry your players along, you know, when they're choosing their actions. Oh, I don't think I was supposed to destroy that guy.
Main boiler explosion.
Oh, I recovered it with a wall jump. Okay. Another area with a little bit of a sound glitch. I'm not sure why that happens. Obviously, because if I was sure why that happened, I would fix it. Probably the missiles against the little fire guys are overkill, but whatever. Ow, stupid crumbling blocks. I forgot that middle floor was made out of crumbling blocks too. Alright, you know what? I just have to get to the control room, you guys get out of my way. I like the graphical effects in this area where everything looks sort of molten and melty and like it is overheating. Oh, hey, scientist dude, you're already here. Great, you should shut that off. Or not. And we find that that wasn't really a scientist, that was instead an X. And again, this is one of the weapon X's. So he's got a hard outer shell, he's only vulnerable when he opens his eye. And when he opens his eye, he also fires off his weapon. I like the phrasing, beam widens dramatically! Wide beam! And everything is under control. Now I have the wide beam, which is, as promised, a wide beam, works with the charge beam. At this point I really don't even feel I need to comment on the beam power-ups. It is a little bit more powerful, but not much. Actually, most of its utility is in the fact that it's got a much bigger hitbox. And now we can head out of this area, because we're done here. So can we talk about the whole self-destruct thing in sci-fi for a second? Because why is... I don't know, Tagrath, when did you leave? Tagrath is asking if he missed any important story elements. What's the last thing you saw? Anyway, why does every goddamn thing in sci-fi have a self-destruct mechanism? I'm pretty sure most of the military hardware we build does not actually have self-destruct mechanisms. In fact, you know what? I know that for a fact because I know that the Navy, for example, when decommissioning ships, has run into a lot of trouble trying to get some of their ships to sink. For example, aircraft carriers are notoriously difficult to destroy. And there's not some button built into the bottom. I'm trying to think, what was the name of that famous aircraft carrier? They were trying to sink the damn thing. It was damaged, and they were just trying to get rid of it. And they could not figure out a way to actually destroy the damn thing. It just... You know, I mean, basically, it's just... It is just a giant hunk of concrete and steel that stays afloat because it is a giant hunk of concrete and steel. I think I have to go up to get down. Alright, I don't have to fight everyone with you, honestly. I think... I'm just saying, it's just like, it's a given in every sci-fi franchise that with one press of a button you can blow up, you know, a spaceship, a space station, a friggin' planet. I mean, everything in the Metroid universe has a self-destruct mechanism on it because Samus is constantly running away from self-destruct mechanisms. That's how she ends practically every game. But, like, though, okay, I mean, see, now, honestly, I could kind of make a case for this one, because it is a biological research station, so I guess if you had a biological entity that became extremely dangerous that you wanted to contain, you go ahead and you blow the station up. But at the same time, it's floating in the middle of deep space, and so it's effectively quarantined from the universe already. I don't know. It's stupid is what it is. It's just stupid. Like, I could understand if the Starship Enterprise could be blown up because you overload the warp core. But the fact that they just have this programmed destruct sequence... Alright, I'll stop complaining now. It all makes sense now. Right? What? What makes sense? Yeah, that's true, Kitmenko. Ridley can survive in space, you're right. Biological containment is not necessarily assured just because of space. Alright, fine. We'll let them have their little self-destruct sequence. Sorry, I just saw in the chat, Mathmingus was just mentioned that he's now on an NSA watch list for Googling how to sink an aircraft carrier. I don't know, I think Adam is kind of rushing to psychoanalyze these little blobs. Whoops. I think I've advanced past that too quick. Adam is saying that there are signs of life back on the habitation deck. And that maybe I should go back and check out and see if there are survivors on the station. Yeah, because that's exactly what I want to find on a station of creatures that infect survivors and corrupt them and turn them into monsters. I want to go hunting for the survivors. And see if they're okay. I will hunt for the survivors and bazooka them, maybe. But see, this is also... Like, now that I have explored all of the... what do you call them? The breeding environments, the planetary environments on control center, the control section of the station itself, which I haven't been back to since the beginning of the game when I first discovered, you know, since SAX first broke out. And actually that wall that she broke out of has a missile behind it that I can get by dash boosting into, speed boosting into. I am not the NSA. Okay, thank you. I really don't need any trouble with the government or any more trouble with the government, thank you. So I would appreciate no rumors about my being the NSA or affiliated with the NSA. Oh, that's the quarantine day where this all started. So it's interesting because what the game does here is now sort of the promise of help. Now that it's gotten me used to being kind of alone and powerless, it's saying, hey, maybe there's someone out there who can help you. Maybe you're not totally alone. Let's go find them. And it's interesting that it followed that with, it's interesting that it puts that right after the whole, the entire space station is about to explode and you have 5 minutes to save it mission. Because again, you kind of have that sort of roller coaster of tension. I almost said tone, but tone is actually kind of appropriate here. Tone's another one of those wonderful words that not enough DMs talk about. Tone is just sort of the mood of a piece. You know, like, you know, I'm having trouble with the idea of tone. Tone is sort of just the mood of the piece, the sort of emotions that it stirs. You know, it could, you know, like, it could be tense, or it could be, you know, lighthearted, or exciting, or, you know, and those are just general ideas of tone. So we have to climb all the way up to get to the target here. Realizing that my discussion on tone kind of petered out there, I'm just going to go back to talking about the game again. Oh, I have to drop all the way back down to respawn the dragon heads, and I can't jump from the dragon head unless it extends. Okay. So we jump in front of its face to make it extend all the way out, and then we use it like stairs. Nature's stepladder, the giant snake dragon head. And now we find the survivors. And if you've never played Super Metroid, then this makes no sense to you, but we did play Super Metroid. And we might recognize these guys as the Etacoons, and the Datura was there, and there she is again. And these are the creatures that on planet Zebes helped teach Samus new abilities, specifically the wall jump and the shine spark. And then at the end of the game, you can optionally rescue them by setting them free as you escape from the planet. And I should point out, in the ending, I didn't really have a way to point it out at the time. But in the ending of Super Metroid, if you free the Daturas and the Datura and the Etacoons, you can see a very tiny little, basically a glowing pixel flying away from the planet, which is supposed to imply that somehow those 3 space monkeys and the ostrich managed to find and pilot away some sort of escape ship. I actually mention that only because it becomes important in this game that they piloted an escape craft from planet Zebes. Believe it or not. Also, just an interesting little note, when you rescued when you met the Datura, which is the ostrich bird thing on Zebes, she was alone, but there was an egg in the room where you meet her. And now she has a little baby, so her egg hatched. There were also a couple of other reasonably... Oh, right. There were a couple of other helpful and harmless creatures on Zebes also that Samus did not rescue when she blew up their entire planet, including the sand-digging robot thing and the spinning turtle thing, whose names I don't know. I don't think they're important enough to have names because basically they were reduced to their component atoms in a planetary explosion. Because that one life sign turned out to be a bird and some spider monkeys, we can now assume that all the crew are dead. Also, I don't want to be grim, but when I first played this game, I immediately assumed that the Etecoons and the Datura were actually X-parasites. Not quite. You didn't tell me where to go to get the power bombs. Oh, okay. That's actually another interesting thing that the game does to kind of keep the tension building, is each of the data rooms represents a connection to Federation HQ and a way of getting power-ups. And as the game goes on, the X are gradually destroying them. So like when we went into the Nocturnal sector, that one, the Super Core X destroyed that one data room. And I think the data room that was used in Sector 2, I've been completely cut off from, or it was completely destroyed. I can't recall which. Which means now we're being funneled into the Arctic sector, Sector 5. Which, of course, once again represents Samus' new vulnerability and her new identity as part Metroid. We might also remember this as the place where that terrifying thing was flying around, and we never found out what it was. You've been there before. I'll show it to you again. Here it is on the map. Wouldn't want you to forget. So now this should just be an easy jaunt. I wasn't able to go into this door before because there was a bit of an emergency in Sector 3. Foreshadowing is a tool that this game actually uses a lot. And it's actually a really great tool. Foreshadowing is another one of those things that kind of makes a promise to the audience. In this case, the game likes to show you a threat or show you something that isn't quite, whose meaning isn't quite clear, and then build it up and build it up, and then, you know, until you finally confront it. So that strange shadow that's now flying around the opening to Sector 5 is kind of a, like, oh, what is that? I'm gonna have to deal with that, whatever it is. And the neat thing is, now, I just had kind of an easy run. I was sent here to get the power bombs, which work pretty much the way they worked in Super Metroid, and are great for item hunting. But I had a really easy jaunt, so at this point I'm thinking to myself, you know what? On my way out, I'm probably gonna have to deal with that, whatever the hell it is. But I also find that the route I took to escape from the Arctic sector last time is now cut off. That, I had relied on a, on one of those little spawn creatures to let me climb up to get out of this room's ceiling. Now I have to take a different route. One that is not only unexplored, but is not even marked on the map. And Kitmenko raises a good point, too, because he says, oh shit, never mind. I forgot about that. Glad I saved right here. So, this is your first encounter with SAX. The first real encounter. It's been built up for a while, and now, as you enter this room, she comes in from the right, and she comes in shooting, and if you try to fight her, you will lose. Your only option is to run. And you can see she takes off almost 200 points of health every time she hits you with the ice beam. So, you really have no option. You cannot beat her at this point. If you try, you're probably just going to get yourself killed. And all you have to do is run. Which, again, is a neat way of building up the villain without letting you beat the villain just yet. So, like, I had seen... You know, first I had only heard of SAX, and then I had finally seen her for the first time, and I saw her walking around and changing the environment a couple of times, and I was aware of her influence in the background, and now I actually got to confront her, and, well, if I tried to fight, I got my ass handed to me. If I was smart enough to run, then I escaped. But personally, that's one of the reasons that I think that SAX is probably the most effective villain in the whole Metroid franchise, because you actually, she's good as a repetitive villain, or it is good, I should say, as sort of a what do you call the term? A recurring villain. Which is, it's kind of a tough thing to pull off. Part of the difficulty of pulling off a recurring villain is that players really do want to just defeat the villain. You know, obviously they want to finish off the villain. And they're not big into leaving the villain alive. Which puts you in kind of a difficult position if you're trying to create a recurring villain, because you have to create situation... Oh, this puzzle room is really annoying. So there's those crumbling blocks, and actually I can see them in the... if I... Diceapp is mentioning the villain... the villain of the Metroid Prime series as superior. And I understand why you say that, but I'm not going to agree. I don't think that villain had quite the same level of build-up and drama that SAX did. Of course, that villain also did have the benefit of being built up over 3 games, whereas SAX had to fill one 4 or 5 hour game all by herself, so... You know what? I don't need the missiles. I hate that room. And Odog and Tagrath in the chat are talking about Agent Smith, or Agent-like. And yes, SAX is very much like, or is presented very much like the agents in the Matrix, where initially Neo is told, you know, you see an agent, you flee the agent, you don't try to engage, you don't try to deal with it. And gradually, as Neo realizes his powers, he is able to deal with the agents, but at the same time continues to grow his own power, and so there becomes sort of this arms race between the two of them, until ultimately it's resolved it's resolved in a really stupid fashion, to be totally honest. That last Matrix movie was... Anyway, enough editorializing. I editorialized last time, so... We're done here. We can get out. The shadow in the background. Which means the game is kind of holding that one. I didn't grab the wall. The game is holding that one in reserve. It's holding it up its sleeve, you know? Which again is something that this game is really good at. It's really good at holding things back and letting them build up. You know, especially because I was expecting that thing. As I was wandering through this area, I'm like, I'm gonna have to deal with that thing now. And instead, I actually had to deal with SAX. And now we have this very blunt command. And no further information. So, we follow Adam's orders, we head back to our ship, because we follow Adam's orders. That's what we do in this game. Which, again, not a criticism. Alright, I actually think that this game is a well-paced, well-told story, and that it kind of relied on having a little bit more control over the game's pacing. I didn't even comment on the fact that the elevator went dead, huh? So yeah, the elevator went dead for unknown reasons. Fortunately, it went dead right next to that destructible block, so I had a way out. And isn't this just a delightful setup? Because there's frozen Ridley, and look at the room that I would have to fight him in. Except I don't have to fight him. Not yet. Speaking of building up things for future confrontations. Also, I don't know if it's just me, but those things in the ceiling, they absolutely totally look like the xenomorphs from Aliens, right? I mean, that's what they are. They're not fooling anybody, right? I didn't mention, too, the power bomb, when you use it... I need to get a running start there. So, when you use the power bomb, it actually draws the X to you. Damn it, stupid acid spitting, vomiting. And once again, the power bomb is absolutely great. Absolutely great for finding hidden things. It exposes all of the hidden passages, and if you can't get through a block, it will show you what that block is. I'm also talking over it, but the game also uses the music to set the mood really well. Because now we have the mysterious blunt order of return to your ship, and then the power in the station goes out, and the elevator stops. And so we have this creepy little, the mystery theme. It's also neat that once again, it's sending me off the map, which kind of implies that, you know, it's now sending me into places where people are not meant to go, in a manner of speaking. Just sort of just the broad implication by it not being marked on the map, which indicates how much worse things are getting. So that's how Adam handles the spaceship, huh? Anything shows up, it makes sure that they're not infected with parasites, and then it gives them a room. Also, shouldn't Adam know the answer to that question? Isn't he kind of monitoring things? I love them just like playing with the camera in the upper right. And as goofy and funny as they look, there is kind of there's a little underlying, underlying implication there to their presence and sort of rats deserting a sinking ship kind of feeling. That the only other non-X animals on the station are trying to secure a way off of it. And I don't know if you remember, and this might become important in a little bit, but those look like the cocoons that had infested Tropical Sector way back last week. I'm pretty sure... Whoa, that's a big drop. I'm pretty sure that all these vines and cocoons are not good for a reactor. I mean, I don't know much about space station reactor repair, but I gotta guess. Once again, with no power, save points are disabled. Which I talked about that when I was doing Super Metroid. When the game takes away the save points in the wrecked ship, as kind of a way of giving the player a little bit of a powerless feeling, rather than just like the character feeling powerless, so that you get to share in some of Samus's fear. The idea of not being able to save your game and losing progress if you lose is kind of a nerve-wracking thing. So now I'm encountering these space pirates, or space pirate X's, actually. And I've got to gradually bomb my way down to the bottom of this room. I don't quite remember how to get around in here. I'm just kind of taking the hits. And then we find ourselves facing an eye door in a really unfortunate placement. Which I had kind of hinted at the game, kind of hinted that the game actually uses the eye doors pretty effectively. Anytime the game can take an enemy... Oh, damn it, I missed... It got bored and just keeping its eye open. Anytime the game can repeat one enemy over and over again, and yet still keep each encounter with it pretty interesting, it's doing something right. Kitmenko in the chat is asking if I've ever done Eternal Darkness Sanity's Requiem. You know, I never played that one. I've meant to. And yeah, I might think about streaming it at some point. Speaking of, boss fight. So this is Yakuza. Basically climb down to the bottom of the screen. If he gets hold of you, he'll pick you up and smash you into the ground. And you can see that that does a crap ton of damage. The easiest way to avoid him when he comes down is to just duck into a ball. Then it's harder for him to get a hold of you. And then when he fires, when he opens his mouth, you unload into it. Yeah, Odoga's mentioning that he's with the Japanese Mafia. Yeah, I don't know what the deal is with the name. But then, honestly, I wonder if what Yakuza means, maybe? Damn it. I got grabbed. And maybe that might mean something? I don't know. I should look it up at some point. I just got myself killed. I can't believe I did that. Sorry about that, guys. I should have save stated. I totally forgot about that. I gotta run all the way back there. Alright, so we'll rush.